Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to User One Productions. My name is David, and in today's quick tutorial, we're going to be talking about a breaker box system. So let's say you walk into a house and it's completely dark and none of the lights work. You need to turn the breaker box on in order for the lights to work. And then throughout the game, say you hit a specific trigger, it can turn off, and then you'll have to go reactivate the breaker box. You guys, as always, if you come to like this tutorial, please remember to drop me a like, a comment as to what you want to see next. And make sure, if you're new, subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss one of the tutorials. And on top of all this, if you guys go into the description of this video, you'll notice I link my Google Drive where I leave models, sound effects, and scripts that I use on this channel. Everything is free for you to download, use commercially, and edit 100%. And one more thing before I go on to the tutorial is that I looked at my YouTube analytics earlier today and I noticed that only 32.2 people are actually subscribed to me that watch my content. That leaves a grand total of 67.8% that are not subscribed. That means over half of you guys watching right now are not already subscribed. So if you guys want to see more videos like this and also all my devlog videos and stuff like that I post, please remember to drop me a subscribe, just because it helps me get more motivated to crank these videos out faster for you guys. And I really like how we're growing this community. We just hit 1,400 subscribers, so thank you all so much for that. Alright, that's enough rambling. Let's get on to the tutorial real quick. Okay, so per usual, I have a brand new clean scene right here. The only assets I have downloaded are Unity's standard assets, because that's the player controller I'll be using. And another thing that I picked up was this little USSR lamp from the asset store. I'm just using this because I was being lazy and didn't want to model a lamp. Something I wasn't lazy about is I made this little breaker box looking thing. This is just going to be a placeholder for my current game that I'm working on. But as usual, this can be downloaded from the Google Drive in the description if you want it for your low poly game or if you just want to prototype with it. Alright, so let's start setting up this scene. What I'm going to do is right click inside my hierarchy and go game object cube. I'm going to scale on the X50 and on the Z50. From there, I'm going to just grab the first person controller from the standard assets, click him in, and make sure he's not going to fall through the ground. Perfect. And I personally just like to bring the camera up a little bit higher so he's taller. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on that FPS controller. I'm going to create something called the reach tool. So we're going to add a cube to him, and I'm going to call this reach tool. I'm going to scale it down a lot because this is what our player's reach is going to be, and this is what we're going to be using to touch the breaker box and the lamp. So let's just scale it down to about this, put it in front of the camera like that. And we can actually turn mesh renderer off because this thing's not a big deal at all. This is literally just going to be the reach of our player, looking at the ground, picking stuff up, whatever you use, this is how I do it. We do need to add a tag, which we're just going to add reach to this reach tool object. And then we're just going to add some very basic UI. So right click in the hierarchy, go UI, and we're going to do a canvas. I'm just going to rename this to HUD for now, just because it's going to be more organized this way. And then in the canvas scaler, let's go scale with screen. X is going to be 1920 by 1080 on the Y. This is a pretty basic monitor size for modern monitors, so that's why I like to use 1920 by 1080. Plus, it's a fairly easy way to scale down to 720 or up to 144. My mistake, 1440. Okay, and then next I'm going to go in my HUD and I'm going to add a brand new text object. It's going to be UI text. I'm going to scale this up to 26 on font size, and then this is going to be use breaker box. That's what it's going to say. Let's make sure in the alignment we center it. And then I'm just going to change the text to something like black so I can see it inside the game. I'm going to duplicate that text and actually fly up into the sky a little bit over here by double clicking it. But bring that below use breaker box. I'm going to change the color to a red, and I'm going to use whatever input is going to be the input. In my case, it's going to be the letter E. So I'm going to make a bracket, an E, and another bracket to close it in. So now if we play the game, this is what we're going to see when hovering over the breaker box. As you can see, it's not saying breaker box, and that's because our scaling on that first text was off. We need to change the width to something a little bigger, say like 250. And now this is what we'll see when we hover over the breaker box. It says use breaker box. Okay, so now that we have this text, I'm going to bring in the text objects and make them a child of each other. And I'm just going to call this breaker so I know what it is. And then I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to call this light because I'm going to be doing a light in there as well. So then the main text is going to be use light instead of breaker box. It's okay if they're overlapping right now because the scripts are going to automatically deactivate these. All right, awesome. So what I'm gonna do is right click on the hierarchy and I'm gonna create another cube, and I'm just gonna call this wall for now. And then I'm just gonna scale it up. This is just gonna be a placeholder wall that the breaker box is gonna sit on top of, so it's not really a big deal as to what it looks like for my tutorial's sake. And then I'm going to take my breaker box, click and drag that into the scene, and the current model that I'm does have an already child camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, unpack prefab completely. I'm going to then click the camera and the lamp that comes with it and just delete. Take the breaker box, I'm going to scale it down a little bit and just attach it on this wall here. Next, what we're going to want to do is actually create a box collider. So let's go box collider, and then we'll make sure that it's scaled correctly. Sometimes with the models that get imported through Blender, they don't scale properly. So let's just kind of get a general shape of it. Doesn't have to be perfect because it is just going to be the turn on collider. All right, that looks about right. Then we want to do is trigger on that box collider, and then we can add some lights to the scene. So I'm going to just right click. Gonna do let's do a spotlight. I'm gonna bring that into the scene, and then I'm gonna change the range. I'm gonna do 50, and then the spotlight angle I'll do 60. Just for tutorial's sake, let's get a red light in there, and let's make sure it's actually on our ground so we can see it. And at the moment we can't see it, and that's because our directional light is kind of blocking it off. So if we take the directional light and we change that down to like 0.25 intensity, we can actually see our red light, which is awesome. We don't have to rename this, but I'm going to duplicate it a couple of times. I'm going to change the color to green. Let's add a blue in there, and then I don't know what other color should we do. We should do a pink. Okay, now these are just placeholders so I can show you how the script works. So let's kind of bring those in a little bit, and now we can add the breaker box script to the breaker box, and that script is going to be called turn power on. Let's actually go over that script before I show you how to set it up so you guys can understand what's actually going on in the background. So we have a public array of game objects for lights. So instead of having to do like light 1, light 2, light 3, we just put them into an array so that way we can click and drag as many as we need. We have a public game object for text. This is going to be the turn breaker box on. Public bool telling us whether the power is on, and a private bool if we are in reach. That's what we're using the reach tool for. So now we have our void start, and because we're using an array, we can't do lights.setActive false. So instead what we need to do is we need to do for each game object, and then we give it a variable, which I just did OB for object. So for every game object inside of lights, which is going to be like the main category of this game object array, we want those objects, the OB, because we are claiming that it is a new variable here, OB set active false. That's going to turn all the lights off that we have in this array. And then we just make sure our text is false and in reach is false because we're not in reach of the game object yet. So that means in reach would be false. And because we're not looking at it, wanting to turn it on, the text is also false. So then we have a void on trigger enter and a void on trigger exit. So on the enter function, we say that the game object, so if other game object tag equals reach, this is the reach tool now, and the power is not on, that's why we use this exclamation point. This means the opposite of the bool here. So if the power is not on and our reach tool hits the collider attached to the breaker box, in reach is now true because we are in reach, and because we're in reach, we could turn it on, so we need the text telling us the button to turn it on. The text is not 100% necessary. There are plenty of games out there where you just have a crosshair and then you are expected to press a button when looking at specific objects, but this is what I'm doing for the tutorial. You guys can modify this as much as you want to suit your needs. So then on the exit function, we pretty much just say if our reach tool does not look at the collider or the breaker box anymore, in reach is now false and text equals false. But then we have a void update. So we say if we press down our interact button, which we are going to have to set up, and we are in reach of the game object, so we press down E while looking at the breaker box, the power is now on. We don't do anything else with that function because we have a separate one right here. So if the power is on, for every game object inside of lights, they are now set true. And then to just help bugs and glitches, I have turned in reach false and the text off as well. On the flip side, as you can see, I'm using that exclamation point again. If the power is not on, that's what that is saying. If the power is not on, every game object inside of lights is now set false. So now let's actually set this up. So let's go to breaker box and it says lights. You can see it's an array, and it says size. What we could do is just click and drag every single light right there. Perfect. So we don't have to worry about a ton of different game objects, because you could obviously do public game object light 1, light 2, light 3, but this just helps it be a little more clean and work more efficiently. We then have our text, which is inside of our HUD, which is breaker. So we'll put that there. And for right now, I'm actually just going to deactivate this light text because that's going to have to be set up over here when we bring in that lamp. But now, if we play the game, you'll notice none of the lights are on. But if we look at the breaker box here, it says use breaker box. We press E, and now the lights are on. So say in your game, if you wanted the lights to start on and then maybe later they get turned off and you have to find the breaker box, if we go into the breaker box and we say power is on, and now we play the game, the lights will start on. So now what I'm going to do is actually bring in this right here, this lamp. I'm actually going to scale it up to an unreasonable size so we can actually see it. And now the way this script works, with the breaker box, we are looking for a game object to deactivate, to turn off our lights or turn them on. Because we have a separate script to turn this light on, it can't deactivate the actual lamp because that just wouldn't be right. So what we do instead is we right click on the lamp or whatever game object is turning on a light, go 3D object cube, and then I'm going to scale that cube down to about a collider size, like that. We're going to turn mesh renderer off, and then again on that lamp we're going to add a light, a spotlight, and I'm going to just bring that kind of like this so we can see the angle of the lamp, and we're going to change that color to something like, let's do yellow. Why not? I'll do the range to 25, and spotlight angle I'll do 50, just so we can actually see it working inside of our scene. And the biggest thing about this spotlight, we need to make sure it's a child of that cube, which for right now I'm just going to call turn light on collider. Organization is key when you're making games, guys, so we will add that spotlight to the turn lights on collider here. Now that we have this lamp here, we need to be able to turn it on and off. So I have another script called use light, which is going to go on the collider, the turn light on collider, okay? Not the actual lamp object, but the little box we made. Let's open up that script real quick. Inside here, we have 3 public game objects, one for our light, the on text, off text, 2 private bools saying whether we're in reach and if the light is on. So our start function, we have everything turned off, the on text is off text is off, and the light is turned off. And light is on is also false. Very similar to the other script, we have a void on trigger enter and on trigger exit. So inside of our on trigger enter, we have 2 if statements. Kind of confusing here, but pretty much if the light is on, then we want the off text to be shown. And if the light is not on, notice that exclamation mark again, we want it to say turn light on. And then on our on trigger exit, we say in reach is now false. And then we turn both the texts off simultaneously. So the off text gets turned off and the on text gets turned off because this is just an exit function. Right down here, we have a quick little void update. And pretty much what they're saying is if we are in reach and the light is not on, we turn it on and we deactivate the corresponding text as well as the light gets turned on. And then we have an else if statement saying if the light is on and we're in reach and we press down our interact button, then the light gets turned off, the corresponding text gets turned off, and now we say our bool light is on is false. Okay, so now let's set this little script up. But the thing I messed up on is we actually need more text objects. So we will have a light on, right? And then we will say turn light on. And then we'll duplicate that text and now we'll call it light off. And then just edit that so it says turn light off. So then in our script, on text, off text, they're going to get their corresponding text objects right here and here. And then the light object that is going to be the spotlight right here, this yellow one, is going to go right there. Perfect. So now, if we play the game, we walk over to it, nothing is happening. You guys know why? Simply because that turn on collider that's attached to our lamp, we forgot to say is trigger. So now if we play the game, it should be working properly. Turn light on, it turns on. Turn light off, it turns off. Perfect. But now, wait a minute. What if our breaker box is currently controlling this game object? All we gotta do is inside of our lights panel here, that turn light on collider, we bring that in. So now this collider is part of the breaker box. So now if I turn the breaker box, say power is on, we turn that off. Let's walk over to this lamp. Hear that? I'm clicking. Nothing is working because there's no collider there. You can't turn it on because the power's off. So let's say use breaker box. These lights get turned on as well as that collider. And now we can turn that on, turn it off, and all is working well. But now there's just one more thing. What if you have a horror game where you're exploring through a house and you have the power on, all the lights are on, and then all of a sudden you want to be able to turn them off? Say you walk into a specific room, every single light gets turned off. What we're going to do in order to accomplish this, close this up real quick. I'm going to go 3D game object cube, and I'm going to position that at the 0 mark. So there it is. Let's actually just bring that over to our player. We're going to make sure this time that the box collider on there is trigger. And then I'm going to rename this to turn lights off. And with this game object, we're going to take our turn power off script and add that in. All right, so now let's open that script up and just show you what's going on here. It's very simple, very short. We actually don't even need this void update in here because there is no update. So we have a private game object for the player, a private game object for the breaker box, and a public bool that says destroy after use. We'll get into that a little later on. So in our start function, we are saying the player is find game object with tag player. So we need to make sure we tag the player as player. And then we say breaker box equals game object dot find breaker box. So we got to make sure that our breaker box is titled the same way as this. Okay, so right here we have a little on trigger enter again. We say if our player enters this game object and if it's destroy after use, that's if this bool is on, the breaker box game object that is referenced, we grab its component of turn on power, which is this script here that is controlling the breaker box, and we say power is on equals false. That's why there's a bool right here saying if the power is on. And pretty much what that's controlling is whether each game object is set active or not. And now because of this destroy after use bool, if you just want it to play once, instead of having to keep going to the same room and the power being turned off, it will destroy the game object. Likewise, if you do want the collider to repeat over and over and over again, destroy after use is not turned on, again, exclamation point, then we just grab the power is on script from the breaker box, and then we say it's false. And then that collider will stay. Okay, so now if we go back to that turn lights off collider here, this little cube I made, the only thing you can play around with is this bool, destroy after use. I'm gonna keep that off for now. So let's play the game and make sure all is working. Actually, one more thing. We need to go to project settings inside of our edit, input manager, and you can add as much as you need. Just keep the 25. Make sure you have the name as interact because that is what these scripts are basing it off of. Without setting up this button here for interact, it's just not going to work. And then you want to change positive button to whatever button you really want. I like to use E just because it's right there when you're playing PC games. So let's play the game real quick. Let's check what's going on here. So we have this lamp we can't use. Let's turn the breaker box on. Lights are on. And then we turn this light on. Okay. Turn it off. Turn it on. As many times as we want. But now this collider, let's watch these lights as I walk into it. Nothing. Okay, I really do apologize. The reason for this is because our character, the player you're using, we want to make sure his tag is player. Okay, so let's, once again, we'll turn the breaker on, we'll turn this light on, and now, if I walk into this collider, everything gets turned off. Everything is off. Until the breaker box is turned on again, okay? But now, you can see the collider is still here. And pretty much you just keep walking through that until the end of eternity, I guess. So if we actually turn the destroy after use on, what it's going to do is only be able to use once. So we'll do this. Let's say we walk into a room, all the lights get turned off. You notice the game object gets destroyed, that collider. So then you can turn the breaker box back on, and then you're free to roam around this area, and now the lights will remain on. And I think that's about it for today's tutorial, my friends. If you guys, once again, remember, if you guys enjoyed today's tutorial and want to see more from me, please remember to drop me a like and subscribe. That would be great. And on top of this, my friends, thank you all for 1,400 subscribers. I really do appreciate it. Inside the description, again, is our Google Drive where I have everything linked for a free download, as well as our Discord, where we have a ton of talented game developers in there, always willing to help, including myself. Something else in the description that's not too popularized yet is my Twitch channel where I play video games and we just have a good time. And that's going to be about it for today's tutorial, my friends. Until the next one, this is User One Productions signing off for now. Peace.